Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time out to join our webinar today, and welcome to Apex Group's webinar. Today's topic is around exploring successful and engaging internet strategies with MS Teams and Microsoft 365. So this is the first part of our four-series webinar, and we're going to be highlighting practical governance for self-servicing in Microsoft Teams, and we're going to be talking tools and automation. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the webinar. Before we get started, I would like to point out that we have a question section. So if you have any questions during the course of this webinar, please feel free to use that section to ask any questions, and I will be sure to pick it up and answer those questions for you. All right, so who are we? So we are APAC Group. APAC Group is a consulting, technology, and managed service provider with over 20 years of experience in multiple business sectors. And with that, we offer a wide selection of integrated services by helping organizations to maximize their performance and allow them to achieve their strategic objectives. We also have strong sector expertise and technology understanding, which makes us an ideal partner for businesses, governments, non-governmental organizations, and specialized agencies. So to highlight our partners, obviously being a Microsoft house, we are a Microsoft partner. As I mentioned earlier, we also are partnered with the City of Montreal, the United Nations, and big advisory companies such as PwC, just to name a few. So our expertise and services offering, we are a technology and solution provider. We provide complete Microsoft 365 managed services, including Microsoft 365 migration, monitoring, and reporting. And we also provide tailored Microsoft 365 digital workplace solutions, which focuses more on internet in the box solutions, SharePoint portals, custom web, and mobile applications. And through this, we leverage our project management services that helps with business transformation, project leadership and management, and so on. And we also leverage our UX and UI design expertise in this as well. So just to highlight the management team, we have Mr. Amadou Balde, which is our Chief Technology Officer, myself, Yemi Bakri, the Managing Partner and MS Practice Lead for APEC. We have Mr. Pierre Olivier Michard, who is the Chief Operation Officer. We have Morad Chitoui, who is our Chief Product Officer. So today I'm going to be your presenter. Again, my role is the Microsoft Practice Lead, and my expertise is around project delivery and also being a SharePoint evangelist. I am a certified Microsoft personal, and I also specifically have certifications in SharePoint configuration and administration. On Apex team, our expert today is going to be Nan Ying. He is the Microsoft 365 lead for Apex. He's a Microsoft 365 expert and also MS Teams and Azure expert as well. He's also certified within Microsoft 365 as SharePoint Cloud Solution Architect and also TOGAF certified as well. And today our guest speaker is Mr. Juan Larios. Is a senior product manager with Creo Spark. And his expertise is around Microsoft 365 as well as SharePoint specifically. And he's also a Microsoft certified personal and is a Microsoft certified solution associate. And he's also Microsoft 365 certified as well. All right, so without further ado, we're going to go ahead and dive in, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Juan to take us away.
Perfect. Thank you, Yemi. First, can you verify that you can see my screen?
I can.
You can see the right screen. Perfect. Thank you. All right. Okay. So very excited to speak and to share my thoughts on the the whole series. So thank you so much for attending. Thank you for giving us your time and spending time with us exploring these engaging and successful strategies to intranets. Just a quick summary of our 4-part series. Today, we're going to be talking about practical governance and self-servicing for Microsoft Teams. Microsoft Teams obviously is right up front and center right now with the current situation of where the world is, and so we thought it was the right place to start and to talk about Microsoft Teams. Our second part will be focused on talking about successful kind of strategies, what Yemi and I and APEC Group and consulting kind of has taught us about the right strategies, the successful strategies, and how organizations are implementing those. We are going to be talking about supercharging your portal on the third one, and we'll take a bunch of open source available products out there, source codes that you can leverage to enhance your intranet. And then we'll be talking about intranet in a box strategy. This will be focused on templatizing, self-servicing, and creating these kinds of scenarios that will create self-servicing strategies for a more intranet in a box. So very excited to be part of this, and I think you'll get quite a lot out of it. So hopefully it's helpful to you. So, you know, I think we wanted to take a step back and kind of evaluate the current place and time and the pandemic that's happening. And I think what has happened with organizations today is that we have seen a lot of the core principles and the core values and needs of an organization be kind of stripped down to the core. What is it that organizations really need? How are employees getting to what they need when they need it to still be productive? I understand that, you know, not all organizations around the world are doing well. Some are not surviving, some are thriving, and some are just getting by. And so we wanted to kind of take a bit of a step back. I think that successful organizations tend to do well in these 3 major topics. They keep their employees informed, they keep them engaged, and they empower users. So those are the 3 basic core principles. Now, how organizations achieve this, there are many different ways, and a lot of it has to do with culture, has to do with the demographics of employees, and overall, organizations do this differently, and what keeps people engaged and what empowers users is different for everybody. Now, I think that in understanding how organizations are doing today, I think there's 3 core things that you can identify that will tell you and indicate how well an organization is doing during these times. And this is a cultural aspect of all organizations that happen, whether it happens at this point in time in history or when things are going well. Organizations tend to kind of grapple with being proactive and reactionary, and this happens all the time. It happens when an organization gets something, for example, like Office 365, and they get it because the main core needs are Exchange and maybe a little bit of OneDrive to store documents, but they don't also know that there's all these other tools, Power Automate, there's you know, SharePoint, there's Microsoft Teams, there are so many other tools available, and organizations just, if they are proactive, if they are looking for ways to make their processes better, their engagement better, their information to empower users, and they do this in a proactive way, those organizations tended to make these transitions during the pandemic, during these times, difficult times, and they've been able to make it as seamlessly as possible. And those that have become really reactionary in technology have really kind of haven't kept up. The second aspect of evaluating is how to measure value and productivity. I think that there's this old school approach of organizations that value and measure productivity by people being in the office. And now when people aren't in the office, it's really difficult to tell for those organizations, are employees being productive? Are they being valuable? Are they adding value to projects, to the overall strategy of the organization? And I think the organizations that have done a very good job of valuing and measuring value and productivity have done really well, because people don't need to be supervised. They don't need to be micromanaged. They don't need to be a butt in a seat or someone in the office for people to think that they're productive. They can actually measure productivity regardless of where they are. And that's a very difficult thing to do. That doesn't just happen overnight. That's not something that technology will solve everything, but it's a cultural change of measuring productivity. The third aspect that I think has become very, very interesting is humanizing the workforce. What I've learned, and it might not be the same for everybody, but there was a lot more loyalty in my team, in the people that I knew, the people that I got to know on a personal level. And we understand that the work culture is much more intricate than a relationship between a colleague and another. What we see today is people joining on Teams calls and virtual calls where all of a sudden you see a kid run in the background, a dog barking in the background, a partner, a wife or a husband in the back having their own calls for their own organizations and their own teams. And so you're seeing a glimpse into your colleagues' more personal life. And I think it's really humanized the workforce. People are much more in tune to, this extra part of the relationship that gets added to the workforce. And it's a positive thing, but I think organizations that have tended to mesh well in this way have done very well to make this transition. So these are some of my thoughts in terms of how organizations keep a successful strategy, what kind of identifies what they're trying to achieve from informing, engagement, and empowering, and then what are some of these key characteristics that I think have stood out to me. So you might be asking yourself, well, why Microsoft Teams? Well, why is this the first and foremost thing that we should talk about? I think Microsoft Teams has solved some key needs to organizations. Obviously, connecting remotely is the #1 key thing right now for all organizations, to be able to reach out, to connect with people, to have a conference call, video call. More and more we're seeing Microsoft Teams become a central tool to organize and coordinate. So a little bit of facilitating the project management, to getting together and organizing meetings and calls. And more importantly now, it's really starting to take off to collaborate, to store documents there, to share documents. And Microsoft Teams has really solved that problem of remote access, secure sharing, providing more of that single source of truth and version control. And so, when you have a tool that's powerful, that's solving all of these problems for you, it's inevitable that you're going to have people that are going to want to use it. And that's a great thing. So if all of these positive things are out there and people do want to use Microsoft Teams, why is there such a pushback? And as Yemi and I were coordinating on this, and we were talking, why is there such a pushback for adoption or for overall just using this tool? And we found that there's really two different pushbacks, really. Lack of education is the big one. Obviously, what does Microsoft Teams offer as a core? What can you do? How can you do it? How is it going to help your users? How is it going to store documents? How are you going to organize and manage it? How do you get started? How do you ramp up? All of these questions need to be answered. And I think part of that is, of course, just lack of education. And I think if you're interested, if you don't aren't already comfortable enough with Microsoft Teams and what it offers and a strategy in terms of how to use it, definitely reach out. Yemi and the group can help you in terms of educating that organizations in a deeper way. The second one, though, is a fear of governance, and this is true across the board in any, I think, major tool of this nature. You know, I've seen this over the course of years in terms of doing SharePoint consultancy. You know, the fear always is that you're going to open up this tool, great self-servicing tool, great for collaboration. You're going to open it up for the entire organization, and then it's going to become a mess, right? Because you don't have the right strategies to enforce good governance for people to understand how to create teams, how to use teams, and use it effectively. Questions like, how do I manage it? How do I control? How do I control the life cycle? How do I structure the creation process? How do I streamline the configuration? All of these are questions that need to be answered, but they don't have to be difficult. And I'm hoping that over the course of how we split the governance and how we're giving you some practical tips will really help you to take it that step further and not be stopped by the fear of governance. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nan, and he's going to take us through his process and how he's solving these governance questions. And so I'll turn it over to him now.
Hello, everyone. Thank you again for coming here today.
Oh,
we all know your
sorry. We can see your Teams. Yeah, now we can see your PowerPoint.
Oh, okay, thank you. So, again, thank you for coming here today. We know that your time is valuable, and we do appreciate your time. One of the most important issues to address for governance is the issue of Teams creation. How do we manage Teams creation? Practically, there are 3 ways we can handle this. First way is leave it open, let users create teams. Users are able to provision teams on demand. With some training and some guidance, they should be able to manage themselves. However, there are quite a few practical issues with this approach. First of all, as we can see in the Teams client, I'm going to create a team. It's quite simple. I want to create a team from scratch. I want to create a private team. I'm going to give my team a name. New team. Great. With this very simple process, user is able to create a team. And we have our new team here. However, the problem comes in when users are creating too many teams. That creates team sprawl, or the other problem is duplicate or generic team names. As you can see, we have quite a few teams that are very closely named, called new teams, new teams, and new team. This is a big problem for organizations, both users and administrators alike. For an administrator who is going to manage these teams, they have no way of telling the owner of these teams or their purpose. From a user point of view, when they're discovering teams to join, they won't have any idea where they should take their conversations. So allowing users to create teams unfettered causes several problems, not only in the confusion and information architecture, It also could lead to workplace harassment or security problems. Everyone can use your imagination on what an inappropriate team name is, but some kind of a security breach related to team name can happen if users create a team, for example, called Apex Group Acquisition or Apex Group Merger. A user who's browsing for teams to join, and if they see that kind of team name, that may just be enough information to be actionable for some insider trading or other type of security risks. Because of this reason, letting users creating teams unfettered is the least desired approach from IT and an organizational point of view. The second approach is restricting team creation to a small group. Now, that is the traditional IT approach where everything is kept under lock and keys. The IT or a small group of champions, trained users, power users, holds the key to the kingdom. That has worked traditionally. However, there are obviously, again, problems with this approach. Problems include this does not empower employees. If you're going to keep everything under lock and key, it's kind of difficult for people to collaborate. And as your usage spike, the IT or your champions could have a hard time keeping up with the new demand, thus causing a slowdown in the response time and turn away users from adopting teams. Just because it takes so long to make a request, get it approved, filter down to the service desk that's going to execute, and then get it executed. If this is a long process, there are other communications tools out there. So that goes counterintuitive to a successful adoption plan. People will turn to other sources of collaboration. And again, this puts a lot of burden on the IT. So you're basically introducing more workloads to the champions or the IT department. That increases your operational cost, which is also not a good thing, especially if your adoption is going great. That would also increase your operational costs substantially. The last approach is having the in-between approach, allowing users some freedom, guide them, and put in some checks and balances in place to prevent all these problems. So let's say we're in a situation, there's an organization, they're in the process of deploying Microsoft Teams. They understand governance. So they think they know governance is very important for sustainable Teams adoption and continued usage. They want to draw people into Teams, and they want to provide them everything in the same place. Their goals for the initial adoption stage is that they want to control the number of teams being created. They don't want this dreaded team sprawl everywhere. They want to avoid duplicate or confusing and generic team names like this. They want to ensure that team is secure. All the teams are configured properly based on the security standards. They want to avoid information loss. They don't want some documents to end up in a team that's buried and nobody knows where it is. They don't really want to, they also don't want to increase OPEX because, you know, this time of the year, everybody's budget is kind of a constraint. So to achieve all of these goals, they decided they want to implement a automated Teams creation process. What an automated Teams creation process would look like is something like this. First, users will be able to put in a request, then the users, and then the automated process will make some suggestions to the users and guide them through your defined governance process. Finally, the users, as well as the approvers, will be able to review the Teams configuration and the Teams request. Lastly, it gets approved. Then once the approval happens, a process is triggered automatically that will create the teams and notify the users. So there are already open source tools out there for these type of creation. Here's an example of one created as an open source tool by a Microsoft engineer that basically does this process. However, we do find that this open source application is a little bit difficult to use for some organizations. First problem is this open source Teams application uses Azure Logic Apps, which requires the creation of a Azure subscription. So not all organizations who's in the early stages of adopting Teams and Office 365 is also leveraging all their Azure workloads and has existing Azure subscriptions. So that adds an extra layer to the deployment. The other issue we've noticed sometimes with users is that during the early stages of Teams adoption, users are not checking their Teams as regularly as they should. They're still used to working in emails. In this application, the pending approval request, you can see in this little diagram here that it's pushed into a Microsoft Teams channel. We feel that sometimes our clients would rather have a email notification approval compared to a Teams channel approval. So let's get right on to it. So the company has decided to deploy this Teams creation app as part of Office 365 or Microsoft Teams client app, so they can have everything in the same place. They wouldn't need to go to a SharePoint site or open up their Power Apps to consume this Teams application. So this Teams application is created in Power Apps with just a Power Automate backend to facilitate the approval and Teams creation process. We have two stream options. First, we're going to go through the creation of a brand new team. So let's start. This is the welcoming page, just to letting users know that they're about to be asked a few questions and taken through the governance process. Here, the first stage of the governance process is check for duplicate names. So assuming, let's say I'm in the IT department, I want to, I have some webinars coming up. I want to create a team to collaborate on webinar contents with my team members. Yeah, so this is totally not based on real life events. So I want to see if there's any themes related to webinar that's already existing. Maybe one of my team members already created a team called webinar. Okay, we already have an IT webinar. Sounds like somebody in the IT department already created a webinar. So I can click on this link to take me to the team. It directly takes me to the IT team. I can look around or request access. I don't have access, but I can look around in here just to make sure that this team is what I want. And if it is, I don't need to continue with the Teams creation process. Now, however, so this is not what I want. So I want to create my own team. So we'll go back to the search. I will again look for additional teams. Maybe I'm interested in examining this webinar team as well to make sure it has what I need. Now I decided, okay, there is nothing here. I want to create a team about external webinars. Let me search for there's no similar team name, so I'm going to go ahead and create this team. Description of team. 1. Visibility. Again, this is important to discover whether or not your team is discoverable. So I want to make this, let's say, a public team. I don't mind if other people want to come in and collaborate on these external webinars with me. So this is another governance strategy that some companies wants to utilize, is they want to append the department name as a prefix into the teams. So this way, when you delegate teams creation to department champions, they're aware of what's going on in their department. And during audits, you can see that who are the owner of this team. If there are any questions about the security or necessity of these teams, they can reach out to the appropriate department. So I'm in the IT department, so I'm going to select the IT. Here again, we can enforce another rule of governance, is that for example, you must have X number of owners. It's a good practice to have multiple owners in a team during the creation, just in case one of the team owners, for example, goes on vacation or leaves the company. The team doesn't become orphaned, and then you have dependency on IT or your administrator to recover this team. So let's see, I want to give Megan as a team owner and the administrator. Here again, we can enforce that you need X number of administrators before you can click the next button. Here you can add your team members. Again, this is just for as an example. Some companies again choose to be able to select their team members from the teams after the creation, but you can add some team numbers right here. And now you get into a summary information of what you requested. So you requested a public team. The team name is going to be called IT_external webinar based on the naming convention established in the governance. These are the owners, the members, what it's for. So if I feel like I made a mistake here, you can always go back. But in this case, I think I did everything correctly. Yes, this is the team I want to create. I want to submit. So it says your request is being successfully submitted, and then it takes you back to the home screen. So this will trigger an email to the approver. So while the email is still coming in, we can talk about why this is such an important and powerful process. It's a powerful process in that it allows you to control the key team's creation from beginning to end as an automated process. One of the problems with even trained users creating teams is that people do make mistakes, especially if they're under pressure or there are a lot of workloads. They may misclick or make some kind of mistake. In this way, we can avoid. In this way, we can avoid information loss. We can increase security. And again, Microsoft Teams is one of those things that is incredibly customizable. So it's very rare that people want to use a team that's straight out of the box. It takes time to add in the channels, the tabs, the configurations. With the automated process, what we're going to show in the next part of the demo is how to create a team from an existing Teams template. And that's, again, another very powerful process that saves time and ensures security. So now my email has came in. We got an email like this. This is generated by Power Automate. I can see that all the information I need to approve this team right here, and be able to approve, do a one-click approval from my email. And as you can see, the email is dynamic. As soon as it's been approved, you don't get the chance to approve it again and repeatedly trigger the team's creation process. And once the teams has been created, now the team's creation is happening on the back end. When the team is being created, which will happen very shortly, we'll get an email notification that's saying the team has been created. As we can, the creation of the team will happen right at the end here when the email comes in. So again, this team's basic creation is as a very powerful tool to ensure that you have a standardization in only in terms of your naming convention, your governance, but also in terms of templates. So if everybody has differently configured teams, it may be harder for users to learn and adapt to this team's environment. But some companies find a very standardized teams creation process and template easier on the user adoption. Again, here we go. This IT external webinar teams created with just the bare minimum basics. Okay, so it's created just with the basics. So next part of our demo, we will talk about cloning an existing team and all the benefits that comes with creating a team based on the template instead of the default blank team. So same welcome screen. Here we get to search for a team to clone. Well, since I am doing webinars, I want to clone from one of the existing webinar pages, teams. So again, see our newly created team is shown here. Since this one's a blank one, we don't really want to create that. I want to create a team based on the IT webinar. Here you can select different teams. So I want to create again, you get here you get to name your team. I'll call it external webinar clone team. Visibility, getting public. Description of the teams. One, purpose of creating this team. Again, we want to enforce the same type of naming convention where it is able to append the department prefix into all the teams we created, so we have a consistent naming. Team owner. So here we have an extra line that do not select yourself as part of the team owners, just because the API right now has a defect from Microsoft that the clone API doesn't work when the owner and the one that calls the API is the same. So we're going to put in just Megan. And Bianca, member. Again, same type of thing. We get to review this whole process again. This is going to be the request that's going to get sent out. And again, we can go into our teams to make sure that we clone the right teams. To be able to have multiple windows open, you can use the browser. So here we have the request. Here we have the ability to know, okay, if I want to clone the IP the IT webinar page, what am I cloning? Since you see that we have very little information here in this team, and it's just the basic one, maybe, okay, I go back, I don't want to clone this team anymore. So I want to go back to the beginning. Instead of searching for webinar, I'm going to search for marketing. So while this thing is searching, since I have administrative privileges, it's searching a much wider range of possible teams than a standard user. So this search would be permission trimmed, and users would only be able to discover teams that they're an owner of. The clone. So I want to clone sales and marketing, because we can see that here it has some custom channels and some custom tabs. And lots of custom tabs, custom channels. So since we already filled these parts out, we don't need to refill them again. Back to the summary screen, and let's submit it. Again, the same thing. So this is the email. We see that this is the email notification for a successful team creation. So your team has been successfully created, and people can click on this link to get to their existing teams. Again, this is a really powerful feature. Imagine that your company are doing a certain type of projects, and all the collaboration space should organize in the same way. I mean, we do that already with SharePoint sites or intranet sites, where you have a templated collaboration workspace for example, projects and everything else. So as you see, we get the same type of email. We're not going to go through this email in as much detail, because we already seen it the first time. We're just going to do a one-click approval again to show the creation. Again, there's a lot of type of teams that can be templated. For projects is only one of them. The other one is leads and opportunities. So for people that discuss a lead or a sales type of situation, or to do some kind of to put together a contract, this also saves a lot of time and human error. So the use case for these type of the template creation is even more powerful than the automated team creation of a blank team site. It saves time, effort, ensures security, removes human error. Again, my team is created, so I can go to here. We can see that the team called the IT External Webinar Clone is created with the same channels, same tabs as the marketing, the sales and marketing channels, right? We have the extra tabs. Obviously not the conversation histories, because that is that's not part of the structure of the team. Okay, this concludes our demo. Now I'm going to pass back to Yami for questions.
All right, thank you so much, Nan, for that very detailed demonstration on how teams work. Let me go ahead and make sure that my screen is showing here. Okay, can you all see my screen? Juan and Nan, can you guys see it?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right, so thank you again. Thank you so much, Juan, and thank you, Nan, for that very detailed presentation. At this point, we are going to be taking some questions and get Juan and Nan to answer those for you. We have about 15 minutes left into our webinar, So if there's any questions that we are not able to address at this time, please be rest assured that we will be following up with you to answer those questions. So the first question that I have here is, and Juan and Nan, please feel free to answer this question. It says, since the clone search is permission trimmed, what happens in a scenario where a user wants to clone a team that they are not a member of, but wants to mimic, assuming that the said team is not templatized? Did you get that question? Would you like me to ask again?
I can get that question.
Okay.
So for this question, in the current implementation of security trim, users will not be able to clone teams that they cannot see or they don't have permission to. Now, there's a different implementation where users are able to select from a predefined set of templates. Then that gets around this use case where users are able to clone any team that is authorized by the organization. So the security trim just happens to be our implementation and our sense of how this application should work. However, it doesn't have to be this way. The implementation can be tailored to your organization and your governance.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nan. I hope I answered the question for you. If not, again, please feel free to reach out. We do offer free consultation, so we can make sure that your questions are being answered appropriately. The next question I have here is Microsoft Flow therefore what's making the governance tool function under the hood? And I think, Nan, you can probably take that. I can ask
Yeah,
again
I'll
if
take
you want.
that as well.
Okay.
Yes, in our case, Microsoft Flow is the median which is triggering the APIs that creates and clones teams. As we've shown before, with that other open source tool, they are using Azure Logic Apps to achieve the same functionality. And again, you can achieve the exact same functionality through custom code or other medians as well, as long as you are calling the correct team creation APIs.
Thank you so much, Nan. The next question here says, Flow has been renamed as Power Automate. Is there a particular version of Flow required?
No. So with the SaaS products, everything is always at the latest and most updated version. There is no different versions of, for example, SharePoint Online or Power Automate or Power Apps. Everybody's always on the latest and greatest version.
Okay. All right, so we have another question here. Do we need any extra licensing in order to deploy such an automation?
That depends on your use case. There could be additional licensing cost required if we're trying to achieve more advanced functionalities. However, the licensing would usually fall within the Power Automate premium licensing, which comes at $15 US per month. In our implementation, to call the Graph API through Power Automate, the premium license is required. However, there could be other ways of doing the implementation without the premium license. But again, that could possibly increase your development cost.
Yeah, there's a licensing. If you use Logic Apps, there is a different type of licensing. Obviously, in terms of Logic Apps, will be more resource driven, where you can with Power Automate, you need a premium license to have some premium connectors, where you can kind of get around the licensing if you go down Logic Apps and not use the premium connectors, but it gives you more, so you can make the calls, you can have the same functionality with Logic Apps, but then it becomes resource driven. So it really just becomes which one is more cost effective then at that particular point, in terms of Logic Apps or Power Automate.
Right. Okay. The other questions that we have here is how can one collaborate with other teams from external organization effectively without jeopardizing the security of the internal organization, say through shared documents, files, or links? What's the best approach to ensuring that there are no breaches in case where both or one of the organization adopts the Microsoft app that is being built here for MS Teams? That is a very powerful question.
Yeah, so there, I'll answer the first part, maybe the sharing. I mean, usually you would invite external users, right, to your projects, and then in Microsoft Teams you switch context. Now there are tools being built into Office 365 for managing external users, or at least having visibility in terms of which external users have access to individual teams. So you can kind of see an audit, right, from that perspective, and be able to revoke access and to be able to kind of manage external access. But external access can either be turned on or off, right? So that could be within a Microsoft team. Maybe you have a Microsoft team that extremely private, internal only, no external sharing. Those kinds of configurations can be set. Obviously, Nan might have shown that at the beginning. It was one of the settings in terms of allow external access or not. Or at the actual Microsoft team level, you could just turn that off, and then at the tenant level. So there's many different ways to kind of have granular control about if you are going to allow that or not. The provisioning process is one where you might want to set a precedence of, can external users actually request at all, right? And that can be built into the app. Nan could probably elaborate in terms of, can an external user actually create a request, and then what would be the pros and cons of being able to do that within the organization is another question to solve. I know it's probably not the silver bullet you're looking for in terms of kind of really understanding external access. It's really just planning for it. I don't know, Nan, if you want to add to that whole provisioning process for external users.
Okay, yeah, I can add some points for the external users. So this app, the deployment of the app would only allow you to send requests to a predetermined group, which is probably your internal users. External users, when they access their team client, they will not see the app on the side of their team client. This rail, what apps are available here is controlled by your organization setting in Office 365. So external users will not see this Teams creation. Again, they can implement their own Teams creation process, or your organization can implement a process in which external users can consume this application as well through, for example, a SharePoint site or a Teams tab where it's not pinned on the rail. That's for this automated Teams creation consumption. The other issue is how to control external user access in Teams. That can be controlled very granularly. Juan already mentioned that you can turn external access on and off, but you can also control what external users can do in a team individually, whether they're allowed to share their screen, whether they're allowed to download files, whether they're allowed to chat, whether they're allowed to send GIFs or emojis. So there's a granular control to separate what external users can do and cannot do, even within a team that they have access to.
Okay, awesome.
Again, and the automated provisioning process really helps with that, because that's a lot of granular configuration, and it's easy to make a mistake or somebody to forget to click an option somewhere. This is why we want to be able to clone Teams from templates.
Okay, awesome. So the other question that I have here is, with the open source Teams creation app that we mentioned earlier, what is the difference between what we've built versus what is currently out there in open source? I think Nani can probably take this.
The open source app, again, it's how it works differently in the back end. And chances are that open source app needs to be customized to fit your organization's specific governance needs. So this is the way open source is being driven, and that's a topic for one of our later webinars. Is that you get a little preview here? Is that the intent is a lot of these large organizations such as Microsoft, they create open source products so people can invest in their products without costing a lot of money, and they can get their partners. Microsoft can get their partners such as us to help you customize and configure this application specifically for your needs. So the main difference between the open source that was mentioned before and ours is that ours consumes Power Automate in the backend, whereas the other open source product uses Azure Logic Apps. So that's the backend difference, and the other functional differences are easily configurable, so it's not really relevant.
Okay. And how easy is it to deploy the solution that we've built? What is the time to deployment should we want to deploy this within our own environment as well?
The deployment is very easy once the proper access is granted within hours, 1 or 2 hours. But the thing is, we really want to do is customize this app based on your own governance and your own needs. So that would take maybe a little bit longer. If you feel like you can use this app straight out of the box, it would be very easy for us to deploy for you.
Awesome. Okay, I think this would be the last question since we have just 3 minutes left. The last question is, how are you managing the life cycle of teams?
I can take a crack at that. I don't know if I know you can follow up with this. So the life cycle question is an interesting question because there are 2 parts of the life cycle. One is how are you going to map how long a life cycle? So you might have something that a Microsoft team that's only valid for 6 months. Or a year, and so on and so forth. Just tracking a time frame. That is actually the easiest part, because I'm sure Nan could elaborate on. We basically would trigger another flow or some sort of a reminder or some sort of kind of staging kind of area where we can track the life cycle and say, okay, that team is valid for another 6 months, and at the end of 6 months, we have to do something. Now, the next question becomes, what do you do, right? When those timeframes are met. And so it could be anything like I think of it as a soft approach where it's just reminder, hey, 6 months, do something, either renew the life cycle or you do what you need to do with that product or that Microsoft team. Or something a little bit more strict, which is it's actually going to do something with the team, revoke access to all users, send notifications for someone to delete. There is no backup of a Microsoft team. It's not like we can back it up and then, revive it at some point in the future. So there's a bit of strategy here, right? And you have to kind of solve those two issues. So there isn't as far as I understand, there is no life cycle added to that app at either the Microsoft app or the one that you built. But maybe you can elaborate further.
I think because of time, we'll probably keep it for a follow-up. We literally have a couple of seconds here, and I just wanted to just quickly round up so we can give people their time back and look forward to the next webinar. Is that okay, Nan?
That's absolutely fine.
Okay, awesome. All right, guys. So this has been a really good session. Again, this is the part 1 of our 4-part series webinar. The next one is going to be this coming Thursday. So please be sure to join us then. We're going to have part 3 and 4 next week, Tuesday and Wednesday. So this has been really interesting. We're going to be sharing the recording for this. I know some people have asked that during this. So we're going to definitely be sharing the recordings for this. We're also going to be sending a follow-up email. Again, we do offer free consultation. If you have any further questions as you're starting to adopt or as you're starting to adopt Microsoft Teams, as well as Microsoft 365, we are here to work with you on that journey. You can find me on LinkedIn, Oluwayemisi Bakri. Feel free to send me a request. My email is also noted here. I think I'd already mentioned that we offer free consultation and also proof of concept to make sure we get it right for you. If you have any questions, reach out. And again, thank you so much for your time today, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.